Elon, for a while has seemed pretty disinterested in the traditional auto business. He seems to be just all in on autonomy and robotics and Optimus, and which, to be fair, they're much bigger opportunities than the S and X are. And I think the S and X will probably have a place in a fully autonomous world, but 90% of rides are with two people or less. So that's where the cybercab comes in, and that's what makes a lot more sense. So it makes sense for them to focus on those things right now.
Welcome to the Gigacast. My name is Gav, here today with Omar and Sawyer, and it is an exciting time in the world of Tesla. We have the first Model X and S refresh in almost half a decade, plus June 22nd is coming up upon us. As we get into the video, for those watching here on YouTube, please go ahead and smash that subscribe button, give the video a like, and of course, drop some questions for us below. Let's dive right into things. This was a little bit of a controversial refresh here on the S and the X. Sawyer, what do you think? You got a lot of feedback on your post.
Yeah, so people have been waiting roughly 4 years for the Model S and X to get an update, and they finally did. And it was a relatively small update. And based on what I saw from people, it seems like they were disappointed for the most part. And to be honest, I was too a little bit. But I wasn't really expecting a big update. I put out a post, which sort of got people riled up a bit, saying that many years ago, the Model S and Model X made up nearly 100% of Tesla's revenue. And today it's under 5% or roughly $5 billion and shrinking, really. The Model Y alone generates 10 times more revenue than the S and X combined. And, while I too would love to see a bigger S and X update, I think unless Tesla feels like, introducing steer-by-wire and the 4680 batteries and all that would significantly increase sales volume, I'm not sure we're really going to see them. I think their engineering resources need to be focused on things that will generate a lot more revenue, such as the Cybercab, Optimus, whatever else. And, some people, one of the things people were pushing back on me for was, in saying some of that, was people think that Tesla has like unlimited engineering resources, and because they have nearly $40 billion in cash, that they can afford to do a significant upgrade to the S and X. And to some degree, that's true on the money front. But it's simply not true that they have a ton of engineers to spare and that they can focus on this stuff. And, Tesla tends to run their teams pretty lean, and they simply just have more important things to focus on, I think. So, spending all that money to retool the S and X lines right now and pull engineering resources away from more important things or projects is probably not what they want to be doing right now. And I think for Elon, for a while it seemed pretty disinterested in the traditional auto business. He seems to be just all in on autonomy and robotics and Optimus, and which, to be fair, they're much bigger opportunities than the S and X are. And I think the S and X will probably have a place in a fully autonomous world, but 90% of rides are with two people or less. So that's where the cybercab comes in, and that's what makes a lot more sense. So it makes sense for them to focus on those things right now. And even for bigger families, you can just call a couple Model Ys. You don't need a Model X for that, and that'll be plenty of space. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see the S and X sort of phased out in the coming years as autonomy, takes more center stage. But for now, I think it was good to see the small update that we did get. Even if things like steer-by-wire, the 4680, structural battery pack, and faster charging are absent, I think they'll still continue to sell some of these. But, I think they're at like half capacity right now in terms of production output of what they can make 100,000 S and X's a year. They're making roughly 55,000, I think, per year right now. So the competition is really stiff for the high-end EV market, and the S and X just aren't really all that luxurious feeling compared to the competition at this point. 4 years ago, they were great. They had a really futuristic interior, but it's been a while. A lot of new EVs have come out since then, so they have more competition. I'm sure the Cybertruck is also eating into some of those sales as well. But they just have more important things to focus on than to pool or push a lot of engineering resources towards a product that generates $3 to $4 billion a year in revenue.
Yeah, Omar?
Yeah, I mean, Tesla right now is really focused on building the future. The Model S and X are not the future of the company. They're fantastic products. I mean, Sawyer hit the nail on the head. 10 years ago, the whole company was the Model S and X. So naturally, people have a sweet spot in their heart for these products. They want to see them updated. They want to see steer by wire and 48 volts and really a ground up redesign. But with everything else Tesla has going on, the Cybercab, the new, more affordable models, the Roadster, putting a ton of capex into a ground up redesign of the S and X was probably not that important. You know, I always think of this famous Steve Jobs quote where he said, "Focus is about saying no. You think focus is about saying yes to all the things you want to do. But focus is actually about saying no to some things that would be really great, but that would divert your attention, divert your resources, and ultimately prevent you from really nailing the things that are important." So honestly, if you're a Tesla fan who's refreshing Twitter all day and following this stuff, you might say, yeah, what's the big deal? For an ordinary person who's looking at a car, these are phenomenal products. I mean, the Model S Plaid that goes 0 to 60 in 2 seconds with a three-motor drivetrain, the Model S Long Range with 410 miles of range. These are really underrated vehicles, I think. So I would just tell people go test drive them. They brought it up to speed. They added the ambient lights, the front camera, the quieter glass from the Model Y. These were phenomenal products. My dad's been driving one since 2013, and now they're even better. So, of course, we all would have liked a huge update, steer by wire, all this great stuff. But frankly, I'm just happy they're not killing the product. I'm happy they're putting in some minor maintenance. They're keeping it alive. And for Model S and X buyers, you can't really spell sexy without the S and X. So they're not really material to the business, but they're continuing to be produced really for sentimental reasons. And I'm glad that they are.
I'd be curious, like, even though only $4 to $5 billion of revenue, comes out of those things a year, out of Tesla's $100 billion in revenue, I'd be curious what percent of Tesla's profit come from the S and X. Because even though they're older vehicles and they don't sell a ton of them, they're still pretty profitable vehicles, I have to imagine. But we don't necessarily know those numbers because Tesla just bunches them in with the Cybertruck sales. So, yeah, I mean, one of the reasons we haven't seen the Tesla Roadster ever since it was unveiled in 2017 was because they had more important things to focus on. They could have released that thing years ago if they wanted. They just had more important things to focus on. So it's just about prioritizing what they need to focus
You
on.
guys mentioned steer by wire and maybe one or two other features that you would have liked to see. Do you think that there's a singular feature or two features that if they added them in, they could actually significantly increase the amount of people purchasing these cars, or is that just not realistic right now?
Nothing they could add to this car would make it financially material to the company. And part of it is just where it's being produced, right? If you wanted to do like a ground up redesign based on the 3 and Y platform, make it in Shanghai, make it in Berlin, make it in Texas, make it in California, then maybe you have something there. But does it make sense to spend all that capex on a high-end vehicle that's going to do 20,000 to 50,000 units at most? I mean, they do that many 3 and Y every week, right? So I think really all their new designs going forward are going to be autonomy focused. They're not a company that takes their 10-year-old product line and keeps investing. I think they really want to invent something new. They want to invent the future. And there may be a time for a ground up redesign of the Model S and X post autonomy, but I think it's really going to be a redesign that's focused on making it a great car for the autonomous future, like we saw with the Cybercab and the Robovan.
Right. So building around autonomy rather than building for necessarily, a comfort or a supercar or pieces along those lines.
My thing, the unknown variable is what is Elon going to want to do? Because to me, like I said, he just seems disinterested in the traditional car business. And if it's all about robo taxis and all that in the future, like I said, I think the S and X have a place in an autonomous world. But most of the time, people are just going to be hailing cybercabs. And if you want more space, maybe just get a couple Model Ys, which is much cheaper for Tesla to produce than, you know, an S or an X. So I don't know how many S and Xs are realistically going to be out there on the road being robotaxis, but who knows? Maybe it's sort of like an Uber Black situation or an Uber X, whatever they call it, where you just have a premium tier and that's what they offer. I don't know.
You have the new Y. Is part of the issue here that the new Y and Model 3 are really so nice that people are not even seeing like a huge gap?
Yeah, that's one of the points I was making. Is like one thing that really emphasized with the S and X update emphasized for me was how great of a deal the new Model Y is, because it's $45,000 more expensive for the X now because of the $5,000 price increase across the board for all the trims in this update than for the Model Y. So it's literally twice as expensive for a car that I don't think is twice as good. I think the Model Y now is a baby Model X in terms of premium interior quality. So if I were to like recommend a vehicle to people, that if you want like a nice premium interior, but still getting the best bang for your buck, I 100% will recommend the Model Y all day.
Yeah, it seems like it's continuing to surge in popularity. I saw that, what was it, the number one selling car in Australia or something along those lines?
Yep. I think in the coming months, I don't think this S and X update is going to help sales all that much. S and X sales have been not great. I don't know what the future is for those vehicles. I would love for them to stick around and get a full on refresh, but I'm just not sure Elon really wants to do that.
What other cars are comparable right now at the Model Y price point from the EV side?
I think since the last update 4 years ago, the Mercedes EQS came out. I think the BMW i7, I think, is an all electric. Then of course you got the Porsche Taycan, and I think what else, Omar? There's others.
BMW, Porsche. Yeah, I mean,
Audi.
I think that is. I mean, and some of these vehicles are pretty nice. You know, my mom has a Mercedes EQS, my dad has a Model S. It's got a ton of leg room in the back. It's got a great suspension.
How does the ride quality in the EQS compared to the X or the S?
I mean, it's a little bit smoother, I have to say. I mean, the suspension just feels creamy smooth. It's actually got rear wheel steering. So, yeah, there are these higher end vehicles that are entering the segment. They're losing money, but for a high end consumer, they are buying a lot of these vehicles. And I think Sawyer kind of hit the nail on the head. The 3 and Y are such a great value. Tesla doesn't hold out a lot of features for the S and X. I mean, they've got a lot of cool things like a bigger battery, air suspension, things like that. But really, they're not holding a lot out from the 3 and Y. These are the cars that are mass produced all around the world, and these are the cars that they want to sell.
100%. Rotating just a little bit, or actually, before we do move, one of the things that came out that I did want to touch on, and this I believe applies across the fleet, but if you guys have more specific data within it, is the safety measures that we saw. So there was a study done that showed that right now Tesla is operating at 26x the safety of the U.S. average. I believe that is on the FSD portion of the vehicles. Sawyer, I saw you shared out some material around that. What's your thoughts on these items? Did you look into the data and really see what they're utilizing?
Tesla for years has shared safety data, their autopilot safety data. They sort of break it down into 3 parts. One is the average, like one crash per however many miles with autopilot technology on, with it off in Teslas, and then just the U.S. average. And with it off on Teslas and with it on in Teslas, both of those numbers are far better than the U.S. average. And I think it's around 10 times safer with it to autopilot technology on than the U.S. average, roughly. I think it's like one crash per 7.3 million miles, if I'm not mistaken, in their latest update. I should have probably added more context to this, because the Waymo number on there includes all of their reports, including police crash reports and all that, whereas the Tesla number is a little bit different. But still, nonetheless, I think the Tesla's safer with that FSD on. A lot of people still don't know if actually that autopilot technology number includes FSD data, which I think it does. They just don't say that for some reason. But this is just going to get better and better as FSD gets better. And I think we're going to see even better numbers with the robotaxis on the road. So,
do you think that there's going to be a bigger focus on constantly pushing out more over-the-air updates as we get to this portion of FSD and robotaxi and these other items, and they shift maybe a little bit less? They've done the refresh now, right? And there's less focus on the hardware and just a huge focus on software.
I don't think the focus on software has ever left. I think they've been pedal to the metal the whole time for like 6 months now, especially. Like, we haven't gotten a major FSD update since what, January? Like, they've been going ham, trying to get ready for this robotaxi launch in a few days. So I don't think they've reduced their focus on that front.
Got it. Yeah, makes sense. Omar, do you have any thoughts here? There's some people that are still on former versions of FSD that I think are kind of in limbo.
What do you mean?
I just know there's people that have been posting that they haven't been able to get, what is it, FSD 13? Is that the latest?
Yeah, for the hardware 3 owners. Yeah.
Yeah. I know we touched on it lightly, but just curious if, like, especially now that they're moving towards full autonomy and robotaxi, just any additional thoughts on those pieces?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say they're in limbo. FSD, AI 4 and AI 3 got updates around the same time. So AI 3 doesn't have some of the functionality that AI 4 has, but they've really just been focusing on getting the robotaxi software out there rather than updating the fleet. Most people are pretty happy with the software that's running on the car already. There isn't really a pressing need to update it, but they are going to send out a new update with a lot of the improvements they've put in the robotaxi software. Now, in terms of the Bloomberg report, I thought it was really interesting, particularly on cost. This is a really important point to understand. On the safety metrics, yeah, it is pretty striking how a Tesla that's using autopilot or FSD crashes a lot less than your average car. And I think it's pretty obvious to see why if you've driven a Tesla. The thing beeps at you if you're going to hit something. It'll apply the brakes if needed. It'll prevent you from drifting out of your lane. But the key point there, when you look at Tesla and Waymo, is that the Waymo is unsupervised and the Tesla is supervised. So in those safety stats, you have the software, but also the human working together. And what you see is only issues where both the human and the AI weren't able to stop the crash. So what we're really going to need to look at as the Austin robotaxi service rolls out is how Tesla compares to Waymo when both are unsupervised.
Yeah, that's a truer comparison of data. One of the other things that I guess I wanted to ask you is you've been traveling a lot lately. You've been utilizing different types of FSD. Maybe you could walk us through your past week, what you've seen in New York, Austin, these different areas.
Yeah, so I've been here in New York City. I'm going to be going to Austin soon as they launch the robotaxi, and I've definitely been impressed. I mean, here in New York City, there aren't any self-driving cars yet. Waymo actually, just before this episode, announced that they filed a permit to begin testing with human drivers. But we did try Tesla FSD, and honestly, I was really impressed. It drove around Manhattan and Brooklyn. Uh, Jordan Kamina posted a video of our drive. You can go watch it for yourself. And it was able to drive us around for about an hour and a half without a single takeover. I think there were maybe two accelerator presses, but overall, very impressive. This version that we're running right now is obviously not 100% ready to be unsupervised. But within the next few versions, I think you're going to see that they actually are able to drive in even extremely challenging environments like New York City. So it's very promising, I think, for Pure Vision self-driving that it can work in some of the toughest spots in the country.
I noticed there that he wrote that he had Grok put together the route. Is that correct? He basically asked, like, what's the most difficult way to go here?
Yeah, that's right. It was kind of funny. He had a AI pick the route and then another AI drive the route for us.
It's pretty funny. So are you going to try that?
Yeah. I think I'll be going to New York in a few weeks, so I guess I'll hit someone up with the FSD version 13 and try it out myself.
It seemed to me was interesting with Waymo talking about coming to New York, and they announced that earlier today. New York is a pretty terrible place to drive. So the fact that they feel pretty confident going in there seems like a
It
pretty
is and it isn't. Like on one hand, it's like chaotic and hectic, and there's like millions of people. But on the other hand, it's like it is sort of a grid system. So in that sense, it's like okay, it's somewhat easier. But if you go to like Boston, where near me, it's just spaghetti because the roads were built for horses and carriages. So it's a little. I find Boston to be a more difficult drive than New York, but certainly New York is hectic.
New York's the oldest neighborhood in America. So if it can master it there, we'll see where else it can. Shout out the old New Amsterdam. Yeah, so that's pretty interesting. But people should go watch that video, check that out. Did that get posted to your channel as well?
No, I think it's just on his channel, but I'll be posting some videos of my own. I got a 48-hour demo drive after this. I'm going to go try some stuff out. But New York definitely has some of those older roads downtown. But the big thing for New York is really the regulatory environment here, right? You can't just go be an Uber driver in New York City like you can in most other parts of the country. You need to have a special permit. You can't just be a taxi driver. You need to have a taxi medallion that costs, $60,000 stamped to your hood.
Wow.
So for Waymo, they really need to make sure they're not blocking the streets, they're not causing chaos. Having a safety driver in their initial testing will help them do that. But the toughest part, and the part that's honestly kind of exciting for me to see, is them working through that regulatory process with the city of New York, because that'll pave the way for not only Waymo, but I think for other self-driving cars as well.
Yeah, it's a good point. I'm interested to see where it ends up going with them, but it'll be cool to just have more options. I like that New York also offers Revel already. Have you taken a Revel?
Yeah, all Model Y service.
Yeah, exactly. So you can call a Tesla through there. You can get the blue wrapped Teslas. You can get a white Tesla. So I use it when I'm in New York. I enjoy the service, and so they already kind of have these people that are building out fleets in these areas. So a company like that seems like they're almost perfectly primed for when Tesla turns on. The ability for everyone to add their car to the robotaxi model. These companies that already have fleets of them can basically just turn them on and send them to the streets,
I
right?
think for other cities that are hesitant to like approve these things, I think if Waymo gets in New York and it goes well, like if self-driving cars work in New York, you can pretty much work anywhere in the U.S. So I think we'll see rapid acceleration of deployment in other cities. I think, and we're already seeing that to some degree because it's already been proof of concept in San Francisco, L.A., Phoenix, Austin, wherever else. But yeah, I think it'll be good.
Which models are they going to be utilizing for New York? Do you guys know? Is this
Just the
New York?
Jaguar I-Pace,
Okay,
at
so it's
least
still
initially.
Initially, yeah.
interesting. Okay, so they're going to truck those over from San Fran.
Yeah, I think they have their manufacturing facility in Arizona, so they'll bring those over. They are kind of getting to the end of the line, though. They've got about 2,000 left at their factory. Jaguar stopped making the vehicle. So after that, they're going to move to the Zeekr RT and their sixth generation sensor
How far
suite.
off is that though? The sixth generation.
It's kind of unclear. We have seen some of them starting to test in Los Angeles. We've seen some cars around, but their entire passenger service across the country is run on iPaces today.
Because I was thinking when those Jaguar I-Paces got burned up in those protests, I was like, well they can't replace those. They're not making it. Or I guess they could go in the used market and buy some maybe, but there's only so many.
I think they have enough for now. So they've got about 1,500 cars. About 100 of them are in Los Angeles. Burning five up, yes, that is a loss, but it's about 5% of the fleet. And they've got 2,000 more cars sitting in a parking lot in Arizona. They're remanufacturing them. They'll be able to replace those cars quickly. But you do understand why, when the second round of protests came, they just shut off their service. They said, all right, 5 cars we can lose, but let's not let any more of them get lit on fire because they are out of production. And, again, this kind of just speaks to Tesla's advantage. As a vertically integrated manufacturer, they don't have to worry about the manufacturer stopping production of a car model because they're the ones making it.
You could burn a Tesla robotaxi and don't, but if the one were to get burned, another one would already be popping out of the factory to replace it.
Let's actually talk about that for a second, because we saw what protesters did to the to the Waymos. But, and sorry, you shared out the video. There's a video that blew up of a Cybertruck driving through the crowd, and they're all yelling, "Don't touch it! Don't touch it! It has cameras on it!" Right?
They're finally catching on. That Teslas have 7 or 8 cameras.
Enough of their friends got sent to Guantanamo Bay that they've wised up now. But
Yeah.
I mean, look, we love to talk about these stories on social media. The reality is, of the 1,500 Waymos, most are driving around without a problem. It's very rare that any of them are getting burned down. Same with Teslas. People love to look at these stories and comment on them. It's novel, it's new, but it's part of the reality of operating in the real world. And I think the industry is adapting and learning how to deal with it.
I think if Tesla had launched its robotaxi network like 3 months ago in March during the height of like the craziness, I would have been more worried about it. But I'm not like now. I think things have calmed down enough where I think Tesla is going to operate these robotaxis without an issue.
4 days away. You guys feeling pretty confident for that date still?
Yeah.
It seems like things are moving. I mean, we haven't gotten a lot of details, but there seems to be some movement behind the scenes. We saw a Tesla app update yesterday with which included some more robotaxi code. That lines up with a launch. We did see some movement on, I think, setting up some of the accounts for people. So it does seem like they're going to be on track for launch before the end of the month, certainly, maybe even this Sunday, and the delivery of the first customer with a car delivered autonomously on the 28th.
Yeah, it's
We're like
exciting.
10 days away. That's crazy.
Years in the making. I wanted to talk a little bit more about these OTT updates and really just like exploring them for people. And this is something, Omar, we talked about on Spaces a little bit yesterday. And I think it's going to be relatively important as more and more people are getting into Teslas and they're experiencing them, because we're going to get to a stage here where a lot of people who never could buy or maybe afford a Tesla can now still take a Tesla, right, and try it out and have that experience. And not saying you can't already. A lot of people drive them in Uber and Revel, but this is going to be a whole network around this. And so I think more people are going to be subjected to the fact that the Teslas get better over time versus traditional car, right? You buy it and it's going downhill. And for me, this is something where I was making that comparison, and just like a shout out to them, like to the Matic robot, where it's right, it's a robot that cleans your house, right? But the idea for them was, I was talking with the CEO and he was like, hey, that little thing where like it struggles to get the corner of your room, or it doesn't take the most efficient path back, right? We gather data over time and we improve that, and it's just a Wi-Fi update, right? It just downloads it. And same thing for Tesla, where it can learn these different things. And so the traditional car, right, I buy my car and that's what it is. That's probably the best it's ever going to perform and be over time, and it's not going to learn new things. And it's the opposite for Tesla, where they're continuously pushing this, and this is why you have, right, FSD 13 and these other pieces, and these are just going to get more and more prevalent as they just dig further and further into the software side, and as well with robotaxi and more people getting to experience in them. So I was curious if maybe you guys could talk a little bit more about, first off, I was just curious, like, what is the most impactful over-the-air update that you've ever received, where it was like, wow, I downloaded that and like my car really changed as a vehicle, so people can understand that. And then moving forward, what are some of the things that you're excited to see continue to come in, and little fixes or big fixes? So it's a little bit of a loaded question, but just wanted to throw that at you guys.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, for me, probably the biggest update I've gotten has been things like one pedal driving that completely changed the feel of the car. And of course, FSD. FSD came as a software update. My car was a manually driven car. Software update came in. It started to be able to drive itself. So this capability is so key. Now we're in a world where self-driving works. It's no longer in the science fiction phase. We've got millions of rides happening, over 70 million miles traveled driverlessly in Waymos across 4 cities. As of March 2025, about 13 million rides happening a year. So very quickly, in a way I think that's going to shock the auto industry, consumers are going to want personally owned autonomous vehicles. And you cannot make a personally owned autonomous vehicle without software updates because nobody ever trains a self-driving AI that's perfect the first time. It needs updates, it needs improvements. Now, most of these automakers, they still haven't mastered shipping even basic features to their car. You know, like for example, Sirius XM got added in a software update recently. Most automakers can't even do that. And if you can't do over-the-air updates, you have no chance, I think, of really building a personally owned autonomous vehicle. So the way the industry builds cars and the way they do these over-the-air updates, it is severely lacking behind what they need.
I can think of two moments that were huge. The original launch of FSD beta in October of 2020. I feel like that to people was like, oh my god, like robotaxis are actually possible. Because I think before that we had just heard Elon saying, yeah, well, like it's going to happen one day, and then but like all you could really experience was autopilot on the highway, which was great, but it was just wasn't really opening people's eyes to the potential of this technology. But FSD beta really blew people's minds. And then I think the next stage was FSD version 12, because I feel like that version really opened up people's eyes to like, oh my god, we're actually close. Like first FSD beta was like this is possible, and then FSD 12 was like okay, we're getting close, because FSD version 12, 10, 9, all of those before it were okay, but FSD version 12 was the first time they had rewritten the whole thing, the whole stack end to end, all of that, and vision only and all that, not a rules based system. And this I think showed people that there was a path to being able to solve this, but also that they could now just not have to engage, like disengage so much anymore. I think a lot of people are having disengagements here and there, but with FSD version 12, so many people's problems were solved virtually overnight with that giant update. And of course, version 13 improved upon that and so on and so forth. But I think those are the two big moments for me that I can recall in recent memory that were big over the air updates.
Now, taking it's like looking forward, is there a couple of things that you're looking forward to saying like, hey, like when we get that update, that's going to be pretty crazy, this piece? Now, obviously, there's unsupervised FSD, I understand.
Yeah.
Outside of that,
That's going to be the king of over-the-air updates.
Yep.
yeah, you get into your car and it's like, congrats, you can
When you
now
can
use your
finally send
phone.
your car off with like nobody in it, that's the game changing moment, really.
Yeah, and that may happen for people who live in Austin at least on personally owned vehicles. I mean, if they can do it on their own fleet, it's really only a matter of time, maybe months, maybe a year before a personally owned car in Austin can do it. But I think about that Jim Farley interview where he talks about over the air updates and he says, look, our suppliers are all these different companies. We just put the contract out to the lowest bidder. All our car models have different suppliers and different parts. It's really difficult for us to update the software on those components the same way Tesla does because they're vertically integrated. So it may seem like a pretty simple thing on the surface, right? Download some new software and run it on the computer. In reality, the entire supply chain, the entire way you make the car has to be aligned to really do deep over-the-air updates the way Tesla does.
So here's a little bit even more of an introspective question. Apple, I think, really pioneered a lot of this model, right? In regards to sending out these massive iOS update changes, and all of a sudden your phone could do things that it really couldn't do before. And it was just like, hey, we have that computing capability, we're using it to the next level. But over the years, that slowed down a bit, perhaps from where it was, and there's a little bit of fatigue, and there was even some pushback on this last update that they shared. How does Tesla avoid falling into that same area of maybe, not mediocrity? I think Apple's still innovating, but not continuing the slope upwards that they were once on, and more plateauing. How does Tesla stay on that slope upwards?
Well, honestly, I mean, there's only so many ways you can make a rectangular piece of glass and the software on it, right? I mean, they've been at this almost 20 years. How do you keep thinking of new software features for 20 years? So, I think they're doing a decent job. They're continuing to ship out free iOS updates, but part of that's inevitable. At a certain point, the product becomes saturated. You can think of new things, but Tesla is really at the stage where they are shipping autonomy for the first time. They're breaking new ground on the thing that really matters most, the core of that, which is autonomy. Now, after autonomy ships, there's going to be all kinds of changes you need to make to the vehicle software. People are going to want to watch movies and play games and do all kinds of things. So I think they have quite a few years of exciting software updates ahead of them. But, eventually there's only so much you can do. Like Apple, um, our phones have, pretty much every feature we can think of. And they had some good ones this year at WWDC, call screening and things like that. But, um, you know, at some point the product does become saturated. It becomes pretty good for most people. It does everything they want it to do.
I think it's a the difference between Apple and I think Tesla is pretty big. With Apple, it's really just focused on a consumer device, whereas I think with Tesla, right now people are buying cars, and yes, that is a consumer product device. But I think long term, as more and more robotaxis get on the road, personal ownership of vehicles will decline, and then the robotaxi will sort of just become, I don't know, like a commodity or something. like I don't think people will care so much about, oh, this hasn't been updated in so long. As long as people are comfortable in the robotaxi, it's cheap enough, and that they can be entertained like sufficiently in the cab. I think that'll be fine for people. It's not like if Tesla introduced clear icons on the Cybercab, people are like, "Oh my god, insane!" like this is not that. Like this is very different.
Yeah.
Yeah, two different pieces for sure. All right, you guys want to take some questions from our mailbag?
Yeah.
Sure, let's go ahead.
Let's do it. Awesome. Evan, if you want to share any on screen, you can, or I can just pull them from the chat as well. Reminder, if you want us to answer your questions, we're taking more and more of them. You can just go ahead. First off, make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. Make sure you do that first. Definitely more likely to take questions from our subscribers. And then go ahead and comment below the video, whatever your question is. All right, let me go ahead and pull them from the chat. Going to read this one out. Okay, first question. My child received an Amber Alert for a kidnapped child the other day. It posted the car type and license plate. Isn't it an easy win for the Tesla car and Grok software to monitor, analyze, and see surrounding cars and report the suspect when spotted? When I'm driving, it's hard, almost dangerous to read the license plates of the surrounding cars.
Well, then you're talking about like a partnership with law enforcement potentially, but I guess I could do that. Yeah. A lot of cameras everywhere. Why not?
But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, with 8 million Teslas on the road, you could probably find any car pretty fast, right? Anytime it drives by a Tesla, it potentially is going to get spotted. So, for something like Amber Alerts, where it's a missing children, I could see them doing a partner with Amber Alerts or something like that. When you get into working with law enforcement more generally, for example, working with ICE to maybe deport people or, you know, it can get a little bit murkier in the sense that you don't want like a big brother society where the government has all this power.
Yeah.
But definitely in the case of Amber Alerts, I think it could be something that maybe saves someone's life.
My guess is there would be like just privacy concerns, but I think if it were an Amber Alert sort of situation, people would be fine with it. But if you're having to like hand over like videos and stuff to the police or law enforcement, and they can like keep an eye on the cameras, and you're like, I don't think people are going to want to do that. But
where do you
yeah,
think Elon leans with all this? Like, how much would he cooperate with law enforcement and just government agencies that are like, wow, we can now survey everything on a daily basis?
I don't think he'd like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of really accessing data from your vehicle's camera, I think it has to be something that the user has control over. I mean, there's already a lot of kind of like paranoia and conspiracy theories about this. The government's going to shut off your EV, even
Yeah.
though they have no power to do that. So I think it's going to have to be something the user would opt into. Um, but yeah, maybe there's something there, but it's also a little bit fraught privacy wise.
For sure. Everybody, when you drop your questions below, make sure to put the word question prior to the actual question. That makes it really easy for us to find them. Okay, I think we talked lightly about this, but this question is, how will Tesla prevent passenger interventions or taking over? The Model Y they are starting with has driver controls inside of it. So it's not like, you know, the other cab vehicle model that we saw that doesn't have those.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, maybe they'll remove the steering wheel. I don't think they will. I think they'll probably keep it in there. But Waymo also has a steering wheel in their cars. And what they'll do when someone pulls on the steering wheel is just hit the brakes on the car. Don't move where the person's kind of trying to pull the car to move. And then they'll kind of call them and sort of scold them. They'll even kind of give you a little penalty on your account or even ban you if you do that kind of stuff repeatedly.
Yeah.
So there are ways to work around having a car with the steering wheel, like Waymo's been doing. But yeah, really the ultimate thing is just having the car not have a steering wheel or having steer by wire. Then you don't have to worry about the consumer pulling on it.
So when FSD unsupervised is engaged, I believe in the Model Y, I believe even if you try to tug on the steering wheel, it's not going to disengage it. Like you can't. So on the screen though, I think there's going to be like a couple buttons. Like there's going to be an emergency stop, and then there's going to be like a pull over or safely pull over button. Same thing for the rear passengers with the rear screen. So I don't think someone will just be able to yank on the steering wheel and then it'll just like disengage or turn the car quickly one way or the other. I think Tesla's thought this through.
Cool. All right, another question here from the audience. They said, can you discuss the cars being used for energy storage and grid balancing when not in other use? And when will they have the ability to charge bidirectionally? Oh, wait, they added one other piece in it. They said the battery in the robotaxi will be cheaper dollar per kilowatt in comparison even to the Powerwall.
So yeah, you can power your house with a Cybertruck currently if you spend enough money to set that up. That's equivalent to almost 13 Powerwalls in one Cybertruck, which is pretty crazy. I think future Teslas will probably get this ability. I think who talked about this? Was it Drew Baglino like a year or so ago that said like eventually that's going to come or something? I think it makes a lot of sense. So I think we just have to wait.
Yeah. So they do have power share on the Cybertruck. I do think they're going to bring it to all the vehicles. They just haven't done that yet for whatever reason. Maybe they want to make sure the battery can have a really high cycle life. But we've heard a lot more talk about energy and electricity, right? As we're building all these massive AI data centers, as we're putting more EVs on the road, robotaxis on the road, we're going to need a lot more electricity. And China's electricity generation keeps growing. The US, we don't know how to do it anymore. So batteries, I think, are going to be a big part of the solution. And yeah, if you could hook up an EV battery to the grid, if every American home had an EV in it, and that could hook up to the grid, that could actually do a lot to stabilize the grid, help grow the grid, and support the growing electric demand that we expect to see in the coming years. So I think that that could be a really important thing for Tesla to do.
Seems like a no-brainer to me here in Puerto Rico that, if you're going to have an electric car, you can use it to power your place, right? Especially if the power goes out and stuff like that. But shout out, I did find out in my new place last night, we did lose power for about an hour. And I found out that we do have building generator outlets that run into my place.
How often do you lose power?
I would say about, okay, so they do some regular, recently they've been doing more scheduled power outages where they're doing work on something or they're improving the lines or things along those lines. And it feels like those happen like once every month or two. And those are typically easier because they do them during the day and you don't have power off at night. And then the unscheduled ones, I mean, it can happen here and there. When we were here on New Year's, literally we lost power for like 2.5 days over the course of New Year's. There's a few other times where it's been about 2 days. I don't know. To me, it feels like once a month or so.
Because I always hear like stories about people in Puerto Rico just losing power. I'm like, they got to figure that shit out.
It does happen decently often. The infrastructure is pretty poor with the way that they've built it and structured. It's not even like we'll have a storm. It'll be, light rain, and that's enough to knock something out. But luckily, especially post Maria, they've built a lot of generators into these buildings.
They need more mega packs is what they need.
Yeah, I actually was thinking about getting like a Powerwall, and I talked with a contractor about it. However, it wouldn't work in an apartment complex, it sounded like, because I wouldn't be able to charge it. Basically, in the times of not needing it, I wouldn't be able to charge it from the condo's power source. It would be tough to do something along those lines. So I guess you have to have a place that works for that. But trust me, it was pretty epic. Like when the power went out, learning that there's basically like 2 outlets by my door that just have not worked at all. And then when the power went out, those were the ones connected to the building generator. And so we had like lines into our apartment, which is pretty sick. And so for anyone that, you've gone through losing power, you can only imagine if all of a sudden like, oh, I don't have to buy a generator or batteries, because these batteries are expensive. The EcoFlow batteries, they're like 5 to 8K a battery to plug in. And they're not nearly as powerful or long lasting, I would think, as a Tesla battery, right?
Yeah, and people need these batteries sometimes, right? So it's a great sales pitch. Instead of buying a car and buying a battery,
Yeah,
why not buy an electric car that can be your battery? So
exactly.
yeah, I'm really hopeful that they'll add power share across the lineup sooner rather than later.
You can like make some decent income with some of these VPP events. Like I know one Powerwall owner. I think he got a couple of Powerwalls, and during these grid events where they need more power, they suck the power out of your Powerwall to send it back to the grid to reduce the load. And they're making like $2 to $4 per kilowatt hour.
Wow.
So yeah, they're making like 10 to 20 times what it costs for the energy. So they're just raking in a lot of money. So over time, if you own it for enough years and enough of these events occur, you can actually potentially pay off your Powerwall entirely with being a part of a virtual power plant program. So I don't see why like the vehicles couldn't be a part of that as well. Like the Cybertruck alone is 13 Powerwalls in one battery. So that could be some serious income if that could be set up properly.
Yeah, that seems crazy. I used to way back sell gas and electric, and I'm pretty sure we sold kilowatt hours for 8.8 cents per kilowatt hour. So if people are getting $2 to $4, that's insane.
Yeah, they get checks like $300 after a few events. It's crazy.
Wow. All right, another question. This one's on Robotaxi. They said, for Robotaxi, thoughts on destination options. My Tesla can drive seamlessly when on the road, but often the last 5 to 10 yards, I'm needing to manually take over. How do you guys think Robotaxi will coordinate with riders to handle the final leg across a myriad of different destination types? So I think maybe they're talking about like, I don't know, parking, or perhaps when you need to come into a specific area, like an alley for pickup or something like that.
My house in New Hampshire, when we set it to go there, it does sort of like stop, I don't know, maybe 100 feet before the actual driveway. So I kind of just have to take over manually. So sometimes you have to manually place the pin, which isn't great. So yeah, I don't know how they'll fix that. Maybe just more accurate mapping.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously it's important to remember the robotaxi is going to be running a new version of the software. So how exactly it's going to handle it, we'll have to wait till we get to Austin to see that. But I imagine it would be much better at knowing how to pull over, where to pull over, and how to let passengers off safely close to their destination. They have mentioned it in the upcoming improvements as something they're working on.
Yeah, well put. Okay, I think we've hit on a lot of the questions. We definitely would love to get more questions coming in. We're going to do one last question, and then we'll hit on any other topics that we want to cover. This last question was an interesting one because it talked about 2 of Elon's companies, and it was, how about Starlink connectivity for Tesla? Someone said, I'm tired of losing my Spotify feed when driving through the mountains. Also, we're going to need better coverage when Grok is integrated.
I feel like that's coming. Like, I just feel like one day they're going to offer like a tiny little Starlink dish that you can add into during the order configuration process with the Tesla, and you'll just be able to add, especially for like a vehicle like the Cybertruck. They just introduced a new high performance Starlink dish specifically for mobile vehicles with a lot of vibrations out and about, crazy weather. And specifically, they advertise it on a Cybertruck on their landing page, the Starlink landing page. So it's like $2,500 for the hardware, which is really expensive. Starlink Mini is a lot less, and Omar, I know you've used it on the go, but it's kind of big and kind of difficult maybe to install and hide the wires or cords or whatever. So maybe one day we'll get like an actually integrated solution. I know like Adam Jonas from Morgan Stanley's talked a lot about this. Elon is sort of, I feel like, tempered some of those expectations, but to me it makes sense. If there's so many areas where there's like no cell signal and you want connectivity in your car. So
Yeah, I could see them adding that someday, but really you need the cell service for within cities because Starlink requires a direct line of sight to the sky and building occlusions or things like that. If you're driving through Manhattan, it's not really going to work that well.
yeah.
So you need the cell connectivity. But then, yeah, if you're in the mountains where there's no service, the Starlink can help. So that would be really cool if they integrated it directly into the vehicle somehow with some type of really, much sleeker dish integrated into the car. You can kind of hack it onto your car though today, so
Sure.
you can go pick up a Starlink Mini, and I picked up this L-track mount for my Cybertruck. So I just mount it in the bed, I plug it into the bed, and I've got Wi-Fi. You can even connect my car to that Wi-Fi. I can connect my phone and I can just use that even when I'm on top of a mountain with no coverage. So you can kind of hack it. Some people, even with a Model Y, plug it into the USB-C port in the back and then they tape it up to the glass roof. And if you mount it to the glass roof, amazingly, it does actually maintain a connection. So I would recommend the Starlink Mini to people who want to kind of hack it in today. But yeah, hopefully in the future they build it right into the vehicle because that would be much simpler.
Yeah, a lot of great questions, a lot of good ideas for things that they can continue to add in. So this is going to be our last episode prior to the hopeful June 22nd launch. When we come back on our next episode of the Gigacast, what are the things that you guys are hoping to discuss? What are the things that you'd want to see that you can come on here and kind of rave about? Or what are the things that potentially could go wrong that you're like, uh-oh, I could foresee this happening?
I think a few things. One is I'd like to hear that all the rides went flawlessly and there weren't any like major safety issues. I hope we get to hear the actual fleet size. He said 10. I want to just hear that it's actually 10 or 12. It'd be interesting to know. I'd love to report that I was able to ride in one of them. I don't know if I will be able to or not. And I'm hoping that there's no like crazy protesters or people trying to like vandalize these things. I don't think there will be. I think that's calmed down. But ultimately, you just want to hear that things went well, went smoothly, and that members of the public, successfully rode in some of these things.
100%.
Yeah.
Omar.
Yeah, I think Sawyer hit the nail on the head. We want it to be uneventful. We want to be not talking about how someone died on the first day. We hopefully don't want to see Sawyer come in a bunch of full body casts after his first Robotaxi ride. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think the software is looking pretty good. Knock on wood. So I think hopefully we'll have some answers to a lot of the same questions that we've been wondering all month. Is this going to be an invite only service or is it going to be open to the public? It sounds like it's going to be invite only at first. What's the geofence like? Some people have noticed on the website it says Austin Metro rather than Waymo, which just says Austin. Now, I don't know how much we can really read into that. When the service launches, we'll be able to see where it can really go and where it can't go. Pricing, that's another thing that I think is really going to be interesting. What's their pricing strategy going to be? So the cat has to be let out of the bag at some point as you launch the service. And I think a week from today, we're probably going to have a lot more answers. So, really exciting moment. We talked about FSD Beta 1 in October 2020. Here we are, 4.5 years later, and really getting ready for FSD Unsupervised 1. So, this is a moment the team has been working towards for a long time. I know they've been working really hard on this. And it's just going to be incredible to see a Tesla operating driverlessly on public roads with passengers for the first time.
Yeah, I'm on the same page. I'd like to see, video footage of smooth rides and data that's coming out and supporting that this is going the way that they expected it to. And happy if people in the audience, you have specific questions about robotaxi or things that you're looking forward to seeing, especially if you're watching this video in 3-4 days and you see something, feel free to comment it out to us as well if you notice something that's a little bit unique or happening in these areas. But overall, pretty big time right here for Tesla. Huge month. We're getting very close to it. We were talking about June is here. Now June 22nd is almost here. Elon Musk is, natty and on the move, working hard for his companies, doing the right things.
Did you really just say natty?
He's natty. He's natty. They thought that he needed some PEDs to make this all happen, but you know what? He showed the drug test this morning.
He's drug free for the robotaxi launch.
Exactly. He did the cleanse. Feeling good. Feeling good. Sawyer, any other thoughts that you want to share on this one and everything we covered and that people should be looking forward to?
We're here, baby. It's robotaxi time. Let's do it.
It's robotaxi time. Yes, sir. Omar?
Yeah, I'm really excited. Hopefully, I'll see Sawyer and a lot of our viewers in Austin. And, there's going to be a lot of people really trying to attack Tesla, trying to downplay this, trying to, do what Dan O'Dowd is doing and throw some child dummies in front of it. But, those same people said this moment would never happen. They said it would be impossible for Tesla to achieve driverless. And it looks like they were wrong. So I can't wait.
Hey, Omar, did I see that they let you on like a nuclear submarine? What were those pictures that you were posting?
Yeah, that was just the Intrepid Museum here in New York. It's pretty cool. It's actually the only nuclear submarine that's open for public display.
Got it. Assuming that they've removed the nukes. Former nuclear
Hopefully.
submarine.
I think
Yeah.
they did.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hey, I know Elon sports nuclear. More as an energy source than a method of attacking.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, report back to us if you grow any additional appendages after being there. But it did look pretty cool. Enjoy the time in New York. Appreciate you making the time even while on the road for us. Sawyer, looking forward to hopefully hearing from you next week that you've been invited down to Austin and they're going to give us the full feedback and experience regardless. I think all of us are either going to be, you're in New York right now. I'm going to be there next week. Sawyer's going to be there in 2 weeks. Maybe we'll all try out some more of the driverless items in there and continue to report back. Thank you so much to the Gigacast fam for tuning in here on YouTube. Make sure, again, you're subscribed. If you're listening on Spotify, hit that 5 stars. Goes a long way. If you're on X, of course, just like and follow and retweet. And we're looking forward to seeing you on the next one. Have a great weekend, everybody. Take care.